The radio crackled at 3:47 hours with a transmission that would rewrite naval aviation history. Phoenix Base, this is Viper 7 requesting immediate extraction. We have a bird down in hostile territory. Repeat, bird down. Lieutenant Commander Kai, Raven, Nakamura pressed her headset closer to her ear as she monitored the emergency frequency from the USS Gerald R. Ford's Combat Information Center. The coordinates placed the downed aircraft deep in enemy airspace, beyond the reach of conventional rescue operations. What she couldn't know was that the bird wasn't a helicopter or fighter jet. It was Admiral Marcus Ironside Blackwood himself, the architect of the Navy's most classified special operations program. The briefing room erupted into controlled chaos. SEAL Team 6's commanding officer, Captain Riley Hammer Mac Reynolds, spread tactical maps across the steel table while his operators checked and rechecked their equipment. The mission parameters were nightmare fuel: a 72-hour window to penetrate enemy defenses, locate the Admiral, and extract him before the intelligence he carried could be compromised. "We need air support that can think on its feet," Mac Reynolds announced, his weathered face grim under the fluorescent lights. "This isn't a textbook extraction." That's when Raven's commanding officer made the call that would change everything. Commander Patricia Steele Morrison had watched Raven's unconventional approach to aerial warfare for 3 years, noting how the pilot could thread aircraft through impossible situations with an almost supernatural awareness of three-dimensional space. "I'm recommending Nakamura for primary air support," Morrison stated, her voice cutting through the tactical discussions. The room fell silent. SEALs exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their skepticism. Raven had logged more combat hours than most pilots twice her age, but she'd never been cleared for their operations. Her reputation preceded her, brilliant but unpredictable, with a tendency to improvise when protocols failed. Mac Reynolds studied the pilot's file on his tablet. 28 years old, daughter of a Japanese air traffic controller and an Irish-American Navy mechanic. Top of her class at the Naval Flight School, but with a disciplinary record that read like a case study in creative insubordination. Her call sign, Raven, had been earned during a training exercise when she'd vanished from radar, only to reappear behind enemy lines with intelligence that shifted the entire tactical landscape. "She's not cleared for this level of classification," Mac Reynolds said finally. The Admiral's voice echoed from the encrypted communications array. "Then clear her. Time is running out, and conventional thinking won't save me now." The authorization came down through channels so classified that only 3 people in the room had the clearance to hear it. Raven would fly into hell itself to bring home America's most valuable military mind. The mission clock started ticking, 71 hours and counting. Outside the briefing room windows, the pre-dawn sky stretched endlessly, waiting to become either a battlefield or a graveyard. Raven stared at that horizon, feeling the weight of what was about to unfold. The FA-18F Super Hornet gleamed under the carrier's deck lights as Raven completed her pre-flight inspection. Every rivet, every control surface, every weapon system would need to perform flawlessly in the coming hours. The aircraft's twin General Electric F-414 engines represented 44,000 pounds of thrust, enough to punch through any defensive screen if piloted with sufficient skill and daring. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, her crew chief, handed her the helmet with its distinctive Raven silhouette painted on the side. "Bring them home, Commander," he said simply. The weight of expectation in those 4 words carried the hopes of every sailor on the carrier. The mission briefing had revealed the true scope of the challenge. Admiral Blackwood's stealth reconnaissance aircraft had suffered catastrophic system failure over the Kalahari Basin, a region controlled by a hostile nation with advanced surface-to-air missile capabilities. The crash site lay in a valley surrounded by radar installations and mobile SAM batteries, creating a defensive network that had never been successfully penetrated. SEAL Team 6 would infiltrate overland, but they needed air cover that could adapt to rapidly changing tactical situations. Traditional close air support relied on predetermined flight paths and coordinated timing. This mission demanded something different, a pilot who could read the battlefield like sheet music and improvise a deadly symphony. Raven strapped herself into the cockpit as dawn broke over the carrier's flight deck. The Super Hornet's heads-up display flickered to life, overlaying critical flight data onto her field of vision. Airspeed, altitude, weapons status, fuel levels, all the information needed to wage war at 600 miles per hour. The catapult officer's hand signals indicated final preparations. Steam rose from the electromagnetic launch system as massive amounts of energy prepared to hurl 29 tons of aircraft and ordnance into the morning sky. Raven felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and controlled fear that preceded every combat mission. "Raven, you are cleared for takeoff," came the voice of the air boss over the radio. "Godspeed." The catapult engaged with bone-crushing force, accelerating the Super Hornet from 0 to 160 miles per hour in 3 seconds. The carrier's deck fell away as Raven climbed toward her designated altitude, leaving behind the relative safety of naval airspace for the uncertainty of hostile territory. 43 minutes later, she established radio contact with SEAL Team 6 as they began their infiltration. Mac Reynolds' voice carried the controlled tension of a professional warrior entering harm's way. "Raven, this is Hammer. We are proceeding to phase Line Alpha. Maintain overwatch and be ready to engage targets of opportunity." The landscape below transformed from blue ocean to brown desert as Raven adjusted her flight path to parallel the SEAL team's route. Every radar return, every radio transmission, every movement on the ground could signal the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. The Admiral was waiting somewhere in that hostile wilderness, and time was running out. The Super Hornet's radar painted a picture of controlled airspace ahead as Raven approached the enemy border. Multiple aircraft signatures indicated regular patrol patterns, while ground-based radar installations swept the sky with electronic fingers that could trigger immediate defensive responses. She dropped to 200 feet above the desert floor, using terrain masking to avoid detection while maintaining radio contact with the SEAL insertion team. "Hammer, this is Raven. I'm showing multiple airborne contacts bearing 090, approximately 40 nautical miles from your position. Recommend you hold at current location until I can assess their patrol pattern." Mac Reynolds' response crackled through her headset. "Negative, Raven. Timeline is too tight. We proceed as planned." The tension in the SEAL commander's voice revealed the pressure he faced. Every hour of delay increased the risk that Admiral Blackwood would be captured or killed. The intelligence he carried included detailed specifications for America's next-generation stealth technology, information that could shift the global balance of power if it fell into enemy hands. Raven adjusted her flight path to establish a wide orbit around the crash site coordinates. The Super Hornet's advanced sensor package detected heat signatures consistent with a small encampment approximately 2 miles from where the Admiral's aircraft had gone down. Whether those signatures represented hostile forces or potential allies remained unclear. The landscape below told a story of desolation and hidden danger. Ancient riverbeds carved geometric patterns through red sandstone, creating natural corridors that could conceal enemy movements. Isolated rock formations provided perfect positions for anti-aircraft weapons, while the sparse vegetation offered minimal cover for ground forces. "Raven, we are encountering unexpected resistance," Mac Reynolds transmitted, his voice tight with combat stress. "Multiple hostiles converging on our position. We need immediate close air support." Raven banked the Super Hornet into a steep diving turn, her hands moving across the weapons control panel with practiced precision. The aircraft's M61A1 Vulcan cannon contained 500 rounds of 20mm high-explosive ammunition, while her external hardpoints carried a full complement of air-to-ground missiles designed for surgical strikes against enemy positions. Hammer, this is Raven. Provide target coordinates and friendly positions. I'm inbound hot. The battlefield erupted as enemy forces revealed their positions through muzzle flashes and tracer rounds. Raven could see the SEAL team's location, marked by infrared strobes visible only through her night vision equipment. Hostile vehicles were converging from 3 directions, attempting to encircle the Americans before they could reach the Admiral's crash site. The first missile strike eliminated an enemy truck as it crested a ridge line, the explosion visible as a brilliant flash against the pre-dawn darkness. Raven pulled the Super Hornet into a climbing turn to avoid potential ground fire while selecting her next target from the tactical display. Good hit, Raven, Mac Reynolds confirmed. Target destroyed, continue engagement. The dance of aerial warfare required split-second timing and absolute spatial awareness, as Raven maneuvered to support the ground team while avoiding enemy defenses. The Super Hornet's engine screamed as Raven executed a high G turn to align with her next target. Below, the SEAL team advanced through a maze of rock formations, while enemy forces attempted to establish blocking positions across their route to the crash site. The tactical situation demanded precision strikes that would eliminate threats without endangering American forces operating in close proximity. Raven, we need suppression fire on the ridge line bearing 045 degrees from our position, Mac Reynolds called, his breathing audible over the radio as the team moved under fire. Multiple enemy positions with heavy weapons. The aircraft's targeting system locked onto heat signatures along the designated ridge as Raven rolled into her attack run. The 20mm cannon spoke with mechanical precision, stitching a line of destruction across enemy fighting positions. Tracer rounds illuminated the darkness like deadly fireflies, while high-explosive shells tore apart concealed weapon emplacements. Secondary explosions indicated ammunition stores or fuel supplies detonating under the assault. The ridge line fell silent as surviving enemy forces withdrew to alternate positions, buying precious time for the SEAL team to advance toward their objective. Targets neutralized, Raven reported, pulling the Super Hornet into a climbing spiral to regain altitude and assess the tactical picture. I'm showing additional movement to the north of your position, approximately 20 vehicles approaching in column formation. The enemy reinforcements represented a significant escalation in defensive response. Someone had identified the SEAL insertion and was moving to contain or eliminate the American force before they could reach Admiral Blackwood. The mission timeline compressed as tactical considerations shifted from stealth infiltration to fighting withdrawal under enemy pressure. Mac Reynolds' voice carried the weight of command decisions made under extreme stress. Raven, we're going to need continuous air support to reach the objective. Can you maintain station over the target area? Fuel calculations scrolled through Raven's mind as she considered the request. The Super Hornet carried enough aviation fuel for approximately 2 hours of combat operations at current consumption rates. The nearest tanker aircraft operated from a carrier task force 600 nautical miles away, well beyond the range of immediate support. Affirmative, Hammer. I can give you 90 minutes of sustained coverage before I need to consider fuel reserves for carrier return. The commitment represented a calculated risk that could leave her without sufficient fuel for safe recovery if the mission timeline extended beyond projected parameters. Military aviation operated on narrow margins where every decision carried potentially fatal consequences. Below, muzzle flashes indicated renewed enemy contact as the reinforcement column engaged the SEAL team's defensive perimeter. The Americans had established a hasty fighting position among boulder formations that provided natural cover, while maintaining fields of fire across likely enemy approach routes. Raven selected air-to-ground missiles for the next engagement, targeting enemy vehicles before they could deploy infantry in close assault formations. The tactical display showed enemy forces moving with coordinated precision that suggested professional military training rather than irregular militia operations. Vehicle spacing, communication discipline, and fire control measures indicated a competent adversary with experience in desert warfare. The SEAL team faced a significantly more dangerous situation than initial intelligence had predicted. Hammer, I'm observing professional-level tactical movement from the enemy force. These aren't local militia units. Raven's assessment carried implications for mission planning and extraction procedures. Professional military forces would have access to advanced weapons systems and communication networks that could complicate the rescue operation. Mac Reynolds acknowledged the intelligence while directing his team's movement through terrain that offered minimal concealment from aerial observation. Copy, Raven. We're adapting tactics accordingly. Continue Overwatch and be prepared to engage multiple targets simultaneously. The first air-to-ground missile struck the lead enemy vehicle as it crested a hill approximately 800 meters from the SEAL position. The explosion sent debris arcing through the dawn air, while secondary fires indicated fuel or ammunition cooking off inside the destroyed vehicle. The enemy column immediately dispersed into tactical formation, with individual vehicles seeking cover behind natural terrain features. Raven rolled the Super Hornet into a shallow dive to engage the dispersed targets with cannon fire. The hydraulically driven Vulcan gun system cycled at 6,000 rounds per minute, delivering precise bursts of high-explosive shells that bracketed enemy positions with devastating effect. Empty brass cases ejected from the aircraft's gun port in glittering streams as the weapon system performed its lethal function. Multiple targets destroyed, she reported, pulling up from the attack run while scanning for additional threats. Enemy force is withdrawing to defensive positions approximately 2 kilometers from your location. The temporary reprieve allowed the SEAL team to advance toward the crash site, but enemy forces remained within striking distance of the objective area. The tactical situation required careful balance between speed and security as the Americans moved through increasingly dangerous territory. Admiral Blackwood's voice suddenly crackled over the emergency frequency, weak but coherent. Any American forces, this is Ironside. I am mobile and moving toward extraction coordinates. Enemy patrols are in the immediate area. The transmission confirmed that the Admiral remained alive and free, but his proximity to enemy forces added urgency to an already complex tactical situation. The SEAL team would need to reach his position before hostile patrols could locate and capture America's most valuable intelligence asset. Raven adjusted her orbit to provide continuous overwatch of both the SEAL team's advance and the Admiral's probable location, based on radio direction finding. The Super Hornet's sophisticated electronic warfare suite monitored enemy communications, while jamming hostile command frequencies that could coordinate pursuit operations. Time compressed as multiple tactical elements converged on a single point in the desert where American lives and national security interests hung in the balance. The crash site materialized through Raven's targeting system as a scar of twisted metal and scorched earth among red sandstone formations. The Admiral's stealth aircraft had impacted at high speed, creating a debris field that stretched across several hundred meters of desert floor. Smoke still rose from portions of the wreckage, indicating fires that continued to burn nearly 18 hours after the crash. Raven, we have visual on the crash site, Mac Reynolds transmitted. No signs of the Admiral at this location. Beginning search pattern for alternative positions. The SEAL team deployed in tactical formation around the wreckage, while Raven maintained overwatch from her orbital position 3,000 feet above the target area. Heat signatures from the burning aircraft masked thermal readings that might indicate human presence, complicating the search for Admiral Blackwood in an environment where minutes could determine mission success or failure. Enemy patrols continued to converge on the area from multiple directions, their movement patterns suggesting coordinated search operations designed to locate and capture the downed American officer. Radio intercepts indicated increasing enemy activity as hostile forces recognized the significance of their opportunity to acquire valuable intelligence assets. Ironside, this is Hammer. Transmit your current position for extraction coordination. Mac Reynolds' call over the emergency frequency carried the urgency of a commander operating under extreme time pressure. Admiral Blackwood's response came through static and interference. Hammer, this is Ironside. I am approximately 2 kilometers northeast of the crash site, concealed in a canyon system. I can see enemy vehicles searching the area between my position and the wreckage. The tactical picture clarified as Raven adjusted her flight path to survey the canyon system, where the Admiral had taken refuge. The terrain offered excellent concealment from ground-based observation, but created challenges for aerial extraction in an environment dominated by enemy forces with advanced air defense capabilities. I have thermal signature consistent with single individual in the canyon system, Raven reported. Multiple enemy patrols operating between the crash site and the Admiral's position. Recommend immediate extraction before enemy forces establish containment. The Super Hornet's fuel gauges indicated 63 minutes of remaining station time before she would need to depart for carrier recovery. The mission timeline compressed as tactical requirements demanded sustained air support through the most dangerous phase of the operation. Mac Reynolds acknowledged the intelligence while repositioning his team for movement toward the Admiral's location. Raven, we're going to need covering fire as we move through the open ground between our position and the canyon system. Enemy forces have clear fields of observation across that terrain. The tactical challenge required precise coordination between air and ground elements as the SEAL team prepared to cross 800 meters of exposed desert under enemy observation. Success depended on Raven's ability to suppress hostile positions while avoiding friendly fire incidents in close combat conditions. The Super Hornet banked into attack position as enemy muzzle flashes revealed defensive positions among the rock formations overlooking the canyon approach. The desert erupted in coordinated violence as the SEAL team initiated their dash across open ground toward Admiral Blackwood's position. Raven rolled the Super Hornet into a steep dive, her targeting system locked onto enemy positions that threatened the American ground force with interlocking fields of fire. The aircraft's cannon spoke with mechanical precision, walking destruction across hostile defensive positions while the SEALs bounded between sparse cover points. Taking effective fire from multiple positions, Mac Reynolds reported, his voice tense with combat stress. Need immediate suppression on the ridge line to our northeast. High-explosive 20mm shells tore into rock formations where enemy fighters had established concealed positions. The cannon's devastation created clouds of stone fragments and metal debris that forced hostile gunners to seek deeper cover or abandon their fighting positions entirely. Secondary explosions indicated ammunition, supplies detonating under the aerial assault. Ridge line suppressed, Raven confirmed, pulling the Super Hornet into a climbing turn while scanning for additional threats. I'm showing movement in the canyon system, multiple heat signatures approaching the Admiral's position from the south. The tactical situation deteriorated as enemy forces moved to intercept Admiral Blackwood before the SEAL team could reach his location. The race between American rescue efforts and hostile capture operations played out across terrain that offered advantage to neither side, with success dependent on speed, firepower, and tactical decision-making under extreme pressure. Admiral Blackwood's voice crackled over the emergency frequency. "Hammer, I can see enemy personnel entering the canyon approximately 400 meters from my position. I am moving to alternate concealment, but options are limited." The transmission revealed the desperate nature of the Admiral's situation. Trapped in terrain that restricted movement while enemy forces closed from multiple directions, he faced capture or death within minutes unless the rescue operation could reach him first. The intelligence he carried made his capture unacceptable from both operational and strategic perspectives. Raven adjusted her attack profile to engage enemy forces in the canyon system, a tactical challenge that required precision strikes in confined terrain where friendly and hostile positions operated in close proximity. The Super Hornet's advanced targeting systems discriminated between heat signatures based on movement patterns and equipment profiles, but the margin for error remained razor-thin. "Hammer, this is Raven. I can provide close air support in the canyon, but I need precise, friendly positions to avoid fratricide. Enemy forces are within 200 meters of the Admiral's location." Mac Reynolds' team reached the canyon rim as enemy gunfire echoed from the rocky walls below. The tactical situation demanded immediate action as hostile forces moved to surround the Admiral's position in terrain that favored the defenders. The SEAL team prepared to descend into the canyon system, where close combat would determine the mission outcome. "Beginning descent into the target area," Mac Reynolds transmitted. "Maintain overwatch and engage targets of opportunity." The canyon walls rose like cathedral spires as Raven flew between towering rock formations, her aircraft's engines echoing off stone surfaces that had witnessed eons of geological change. Below, human conflict played out in minutes that would determine the fate of national security secrets worth billions of dollars and countless American lives. The Super Hornet's cannon hammered enemy positions as Raven navigated the canyon system at 200 feet above ground level, her pilot skills tested by terrain that left no margin for error. Rock walls flashed past the cockpit canopy, while targeting data streamed across her heads-up display, creating a sensory overload that demanded absolute concentration and reflexive responses. Enemy tracer rounds streaked upward from concealed positions as hostile forces attempted to engage the low-flying aircraft with small arms fire. The Super Hornet's titanium and composite construction could withstand moderate battle damage, but concentrated fire from multiple weapons could disable critical systems or wound the pilot in an environment where mechanical failure meant certain death. "Taking ground fire from multiple positions," Raven reported, while executing violent maneuvering to avoid enemy weapons. "Continuing engagement of targets in the canyon system." The SEAL team's movement through the rocky terrain created dust clouds that marked their progress toward Admiral Blackwood's last known position. Enemy forces had established hasty ambush positions along likely approach routes, forcing the Americans to fight for every meter of ground in an environment where conventional tactics offered limited application. Mac Reynolds' voice carried the strain of close combat. "Raven, we need immediate suppression fire on coordinates I'm about to transmit. Enemy forces have the Admiral pinned down in a dead-end canyon approximately 50 meters from our position." The targeting coordinates appeared on Raven's tactical display as she banked the Super Hornet into attack position. The strike would require precision delivery of ordnance in extremely close proximity to friendly forces, a tactical challenge that tested both pilot skill and aircraft capabilities under combat conditions. "Coordinates received," Raven confirmed. "Danger close engagement in 30 seconds. Mark your positions with infrared strobes." The canyon walls channeled the Super Hornet's engine noise into a thunderous roar that announced her presence to every combatant in the area. Enemy forces recognized the threat and intensified their efforts to capture or eliminate Admiral Blackwood before American air power could decisively influence the tactical situation. High explosive shells impacted rock walls with devastating effect as Raven engaged enemy positions with surgical precision. The confined space amplified blast effects, while fragmenting stone created additional projectiles that scoured hostile fighting positions with deadly efficiency. The canyon filled with smoke and debris as the aerial assault eliminated or suppressed enemy resistance. Targets neutralized, Raven transmitted. Path is clear for final approach to the Admiral's position. The SEAL team advanced through the devastation as Raven climbed out of the canyon system to establish overwatch position. Fuel gauges indicated 37 minutes remaining before she would need to depart for carrier recovery, creating pressure for immediate extraction before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Admiral Blackwood emerged from concealment as Mac Reynolds' team reached his position. The senior officer's flight suit torn and dusty, but his bearings still commanding despite the circumstances of his rescue. The extraction phase required careful coordination as the combined American force prepared to fight their way out of hostile territory while enemy reinforcements converged on their position. Raven orbited overhead, her aircraft's sensors detecting vehicle movements that indicated substantial enemy forces moving to cut off escape routes back to friendly territory. Hammer, this is Raven. I'm showing significant enemy activity between your position and the extraction coordinates. Multiple vehicle columns approaching from the east and south. The tactical picture revealed a coordinated enemy response designed to trap the American force in terrain that offered limited escape options. Admiral Blackwood's voice joined the tactical net as he integrated with the SEAL team's communication system. This is Ironside. Enemy forces know the intelligence value of this operation. They will commit substantial resources to prevent our extraction. The Admiral's assessment confirmed what Raven observed through her aircraft's sensors. Heat signatures indicated enemy forces numbering in the hundreds converging on the canyon system from multiple directions. The tactical situation had evolved from rescue operation to running battle as American forces prepared to fight their way through determined opposition. Mac Reynolds adjusted his team's formation for movement under contact, while Raven planned her support fires to cover their withdrawal. The Super Hornet carried sufficient ordnance for sustained combat operations, but fuel considerations limited her ability to provide extended close air support during a protracted engagement. Beginning movement to extraction coordinates, Mac Reynolds transmitted. Raven, we're going to need continuous air support for the next 40 minutes. Can you maintain station? The request exceeded Raven's calculated fuel reserves by 13 minutes, creating a tactical dilemma that balanced mission success against pilot survival. The decision required split-second calculation of risk factors that could determine the fate of multiple American lives and critical national security intelligence. Affirmative, Hammer. I can provide coverage for the full extraction timeline. Raven's commitment represented a calculated risk that prioritized mission accomplishment over personal safety, a decision that exemplified the warrior ethos that defined naval aviation. The combined American force began their fighting withdrawal through terrain that channeled their movement into predictable routes covered by enemy observation and fires. Success depended on speed, violence of action, and the devastating effectiveness of close air support delivered with surgical precision in close combat conditions. Enemy contact intensified as hostile forces attempted to establish blocking positions across the Americans' withdrawal route. Raven's cannon spoke repeatedly as she engaged target after target in the unfolding battle for survival in hostile territory. The Super Hornet's ordnance bay emptied systematically as each missile and bomb found enemy positions that threatened the ground forces' movement to safety. The tactical radio net crackled with combat reports as the running battle developed across multiple terrain features. each demanding specific tactical responses from both air and ground elements operating in perfect coordination, despite the chaos of close combat. The withdrawal transformed into a masterpiece of combined arms warfare, as Raven coordinated her attacks with the SEAL team's movement through increasingly hostile territory. Enemy forces established multiple ambush positions along the Americans' route to the extraction site, forcing continuous tactical adjustments that tested both pilot skill and ground combat expertise under extreme pressure. Contact left, contact left. Mac Reynolds called as enemy fire erupted from concealed positions among boulder formations. Raven, we need immediate suppression on bearing 270 degrees from our position. The Super Hornet rolled into a steep diving attack as Raven acquired the target coordinates through her aircraft's sensors. 20mm high-explosive shells walked across enemy fighting positions with mechanical precision, each burst destroying or suppressing hostile weapons that threatened the American ground force. Rock fragments and metal debris filled the air as the aerial assault eliminated defensive positions that could have stopped the withdrawal. Admiral Blackwood moved with the SEAL team despite his age and recent crash trauma, his presence adding both tactical complexity and strategic importance to every decision made under fire. The intelligence he carried represented years of research and development that could shift global military balance if captured by hostile forces. Enemy reinforcements approaching from the northeast, Raven reported while climbing from her attack run. Mechanized infantry with armored support. Estimated time to contact with your position is 12 minutes. The tactical picture deteriorated as enemy commanders committed armored vehicles to the engagement, escalating the threat level beyond what infantry weapons could effectively counter. The SEAL team's anti-armor capabilities were limited, making air support essential for survival against enemy forces that included main battle tanks and infantry fighting vehicles. Mac Reynolds acknowledged the intelligence while adjusting his team's route to avoid terrain that favored enemy armor operations. Copy, Raven. We're moving to alternate extraction coordinates that offer better defensive positions against mechanized assault. The new extraction site lay across 4 kilometers of open desert that offered minimal concealment from enemy observation. The tactical challenge required the American force to cross exposed terrain while under attack from superior numbers, equipped with heavy weapons and armor protection that could withstand small arms fire. Raven's fuel gauges indicated 28 minutes remaining before she would need to depart for carrier recovery, creating time pressure that compressed tactical options to their most essential elements. Every minute of delay increased the probability of enemy forces establishing positions that could prevent successful extraction. The Super Hornet's targeting system locked onto the advancing enemy armor as Raven prepared to engage the most significant threat to American survival. Air-to-ground missiles streaked toward their targets, while the ground force continued their movement across terrain that offered death to those who hesitated or made tactical errors under pressure. First missile impact, she reported as the lead enemy tank disappeared in an explosion that sent smoke and debris high into the desert air. Continuing engagement of armored targets. The battle intensified as enemy forces recognized the effectiveness of American air support and adjusted their tactics accordingly. The desert battlefield transformed into a complex tactical puzzle as enemy armored vehicles dispersed to avoid concentrated air attacks while maintaining pressure on the withdrawing American force. Raven engaged multiple targets simultaneously, her aircraft's sophisticated fire control systems allowing rapid transitions between air-to-ground missiles and cannon fire as tactical requirements shifted with the developing engagement. Second tank destroyed, she reported while banking into position for another attack run. Enemy infantry is dismounting and taking cover among the rock formations. I'm switching to area suppression fires. The Super Hornet's cannon carved lines of destruction across enemy positions as dismounted infantry sought cover among terrain features that provided protection from direct fire weapons. High explosive shells fragmented against rock surfaces, creating deadly projectile storms that forced enemy soldiers to remain concealed rather than advancing against the American ground force. Admiral Blackwood's tactical experience proved invaluable as he coordinated with Mac Reynolds to identify enemy weak points and recommend attack priorities. His knowledge of enemy doctrine and capabilities provided crucial intelligence that enhanced American tactical decision-making under extreme combat stress. Hammer, this is Ironside. Enemy forces are establishing a blocking position approximately 2 kilometers ahead of our current route. Recommend we adjust our approach to avoid prepared defensive positions. The tactical modification required additional time and exposure to enemy observation, but avoiding prepared defensive positions could prevent the American force from walking into a carefully orchestrated ambush. Mac Reynolds acknowledged the recommendation while directing his team toward terrain that offered better tactical options. Raven, we're adjusting our route to the north. Can you provide overwatch of our new approach while continuing engagement of the armored threat? Mac Reynolds' request demanded precise coordination between air and ground elements as the tactical situation continued to evolve. Raven confirmed the new mission parameters while engaging another enemy tank with air-to-ground missiles. The vehicle's destruction eliminated a significant threat to the ground force while reducing enemy capabilities for sustained operations against American forces. Each successful engagement improved the odds of mission success while depleting her aircraft's ordnance supplies. 22 minutes of fuel remaining, she transmitted, the fuel state creating urgency that affected every tactical decision. The mathematics of naval aviation allowed no margin for error when operating at maximum range from carrier-based recovery options. The SEAL team's movement across open terrain created dust signatures that marked their progress for enemy observers, but speed took precedence over concealment as the race against time intensified. Enemy forces recognized their closing window of opportunity and increased their operational tempo to prevent American extraction. Artillery shells began impacting around the American positions as enemy forces brought indirect fire weapons into the engagement, adding another layer of threat that required immediate tactical response. The explosive impacts created crater patterns across the desert floor while shrapnel whistled overhead with lethal intent. Taking indirect fire, Mac Reynolds reported, adjusting movement to avoid predicted impact areas. Raven searched for the enemy artillery positions through her aircraft's sensors while maintaining close air support for the ground force. The tactical challenge of engaging indirect fire weapons required precise target identification in an environment where friendly and hostile forces operated in close proximity. Enemy aircraft signatures appeared on her radar display as hostile air forces entered the engagement area, transforming the tactical situation from air-to-ground operations to air-to-air combat while maintaining support for the embattled ground force. The complexity of multi-domain warfare tested pilot skills and aircraft capabilities to their absolute limits. Raven, I'm showing multiple enemy aircraft approaching your position from the southeast, came the warning from the carrier's Combat Information Center. Recommend you engage or evade immediately. The tactical decision required split-second analysis of mission priorities balanced against survival probabilities as enemy fighters closed on her position with lethal intent. The Super Hornet's air-to-air capabilities were formidable, but engaging enemy aircraft would temporarily suspend close air support for the ground force at their most vulnerable moment. Raven selected air-to-air missiles while maintaining her position over the SEAL team, accepting the tactical risk of aerial combat to ensure continued support for the ground force. The decision exemplified the warrior ethos that prioritized mission accomplishment over personal safety in the crucible of combat operations. Engaging enemy aircraft, she transmitted as missile-locked tones filled her headset, continuing overwatch of ground forces. The air battle erupted as missiles streaked between opposing aircraft, while the ground fight continued below. The three-dimensional battlefield tested human and machine capabilities in an environment where microseconds determined survival and mission success, hung in the balance between competing tactical demands. The first enemy fighter disintegrated under the impact of Raven's AIM-120 missile, its wreckage tumbling toward the desert floor in a trail of smoke and debris. The successful engagement eliminated one threat, while two additional enemy aircraft maneuvered for attack position against her Super Hornet. The aerial combat demanded absolute spatial awareness as she maintained position over the SEAL team while defending against multiple attackers. "Splash one enemy fighter," Raven reported while rolling into evasive maneuvers. Two additional bandits remain airborne and aggressive. Enemy missiles streaked past her aircraft as hostile pilots attempted to lock onto the Super Hornet's heat signature. The electronic warfare suite automatically deployed chaff and flares to confuse incoming weapons, while Raven used her aircraft's superior maneuverability to avoid enemy fire. The deadly dance of aerial combat played out at closing speeds that compressed decision-making into instinctive responses. Below, the SEAL team reached a defensive position among rocky outcroppings that provided cover from enemy ground fire, while offering clear fields of observation toward the extraction coordinates. Mac Reynolds' voice carried the strain of sustained combat as he coordinated his team's final movement to safety. "Raven, we're in position for extraction. How much longer can you provide air cover?" Fuel gauges indicated 17 minutes remaining before mandatory departure for carrier recovery. The timeline created inexorable pressure as enemy forces recognized their diminishing opportunity to prevent American escape from hostile territory. Artillery fire intensified, while enemy infantry advanced across open ground toward the American defensive position. 17 minutes of station time remaining, Raven transmitted while engaging the second enemy fighter with cannon fire. "I can provide coverage until extraction completion or fuel exhaustion, whichever comes first." The commitment represented a calculated decision that prioritized mission success over pilot survival, accepting the risk of fuel exhaustion over enemy territory to ensure the ground forces' successful extraction. The mathematics of naval aviation offered no safety margin for such tactical decisions. Admiral Blackwood's voice joined the tactical net with information that could shift the entire operational balance. "Extraction helicopter is inbound, estimated time of arrival 8 minutes. Enemy forces are concentrating for final assault on our position." The converging timelines created a narrow window where success remained possible despite overwhelming enemy numerical superiority. The SEAL team prepared for their most dangerous moment as extraction aircraft approached, while enemy forces massed for decisive assault against the American position. Raven destroyed the second enemy fighter with a burst of 20mm cannon fire before turning her attention to the enemy ground assault developing against.